Welcome, everyone, to Uniting Your Sexual and Spiritual Powers. I'm Dawn, and I'm going to share a small bit about me, and then I'm going to jump into the class. I'm really trying very hard to minimize my intro, but I've been doing this for 25 years, and I continue to do more projects. So the intro actually gets longer. I work hard at making it shorter. Most people know me as part of Dan and Dawn from the Power Exchange communities, the polyamorous communities. We are also co-host of the Erotic Awakening Podcast. So that's where I'm usually known. But I've done a lot in the sacred sex community. And sometimes we get pulled in to teach on it at events, which is really awesome. But that means that people don't know my background in sacred sexuality. So I'll be talking quite a bit about that during this. But just a quick intro of what I've done over the years. I've been studying sacred sex since so a very long time. I consider myself a modern Qadishti, and I'll explain a little more about what that is as well. I've been a Reiki Master, an energy worker since about 2001. Also a co-creator of the Path of the Qadishti, which is a sacred sexuality training program. We created that when we found that Tantra was costing too much money and we wanted to make sacred sex more available to everyone. So we created that program and then over time gave it to some students of ours and they have been running with it. I'm creator of Eros Gathering. I did it in person for many years. I was looking at my notes. It looks like it was 2012 when I did the first class. And I'm also the author of a book called Rituals from Birth to Earth. So, and I just went to my local pagan store and they've got copies of it on the shelves. That's exciting. And like I said, co-host of the Erotic Awakening Podcast, where we talk about everything from power exchange, polyamory, kink, sacred sex, all the things. 15 years worth, almost 700 shows. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, this is class number 12 in the Eros Gathering series, but you can start anywhere. You don't have to start with class one. All of these classes are kind of self-contained. And because of that, that means I'm going to talk a little bit about what sacred sexuality is, which is what this class falls under the umbrella of. But first, a couple of little disclaimers. I am a storyteller. I teach from experience. I share from experience. I teach from experience. With that in mind, most people that do sacred sex teaching teach from their experience, which means that each of us have different experiences. What I share with my experience and what I share for you and different things that different practices that I can give you to use means it could be different than what other people teach. Doesn't make either one right or wrong. It just makes it different experiences. So I actually recommend that you participate in my classes, but also that you find other people's classes to participate in. So to be a little more well-rounded, it'll give you some mini ideas. I still go to other people's classes because I love to learn new things, and there's so much out there. So that's another disclaimer in that sacred sexuality is a huge umbrella term. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Okay. The next disclaimer is that this is going to feel like a fire hose, an info dump. Maybe that's why I like Zoom classes. I like info dumping. I love sharing all this information and hope that it fires up someone else's desire to go study something new or to add something to their practice. I really love doing this. So it's going to be like a fire hose. It's going to be a lot of information directed at you, given to you. Take what you like, leave the rest. Naughty language. This is a sacred sex class. I only advertise it on FetLife and Forbidden Tickets. So yeah, it's going to have naughty language. It may have body part language if I forget to use the tantra words, and it might have kinky language. It's a sex class. So I just like to throw that out there. All right, so let's get started. So first of all, what is sacred sexuality? That seems to be a big question for people. It was for me the first time I ran across it. I'm like, what is this sacred sexuality thing? like I said, it's a huge umbrella term, and it can mean anything from longer lasting orgasms to connecting and becoming one with the divine, the higher self, the universe, whatever language you use, right? So it's a way to connect to people. If a magazine uses it, it is probably used to share how to last longer, how to have body orgasms, how to pleasure someone. That's still sacred sex, okay? So it all falls under that umbrella. Now, a lot of people, when they hear sacred sex, the first thing they think of is tantra or tantra, however you pronounce it. And that's not wrong, but that's only one leg under the umbrella. It just happens to be a very well-known one. So this is not a class about tantra. It is not a class about any particular modality of sacred sex. So it is across the board. I consider myself a Qadishti, which is like a tantrika from Tantra, but not as structured. So Tantra has a lot of structure to it, which is a good thing as well, because that means I can have Tantra books that have practices in it that help me connect to other people. But I also have sex magic books, high magic sex magic books that teach me how to use sex to connect to the divine. There's all kinds of paths there. So again, it's not about any particular modality. Basically, if I wanted to simplify what I think sacred sex is, it's basically using sexual energy to connect to yourself, to others, or to the divine. And that's just the woo word that I use. I use whatever works for you. Some people work with gods and goddesses, divine, universe, the all kinds of verbiage for that. Even simpler, it could be defined as conscious sex for connection. So basically, you are being mindful of what you are doing with your sexual energy and how it's being used. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. Whether it is for better orgasms, you're paying attention to what you're doing. Whether it's for connecting to the divine, you're paying attention to what you're doing. So conscious, mindful sex. Now, I do like to be clear because a lot of paths teach that sacred sex, or at least their verbiage is that sacred sex is between a man and a woman, female, male. And I would like to say, no, that is not true. I have had sacred sex with myself. I have had sacred sex with opposite sex partner, same sex partner, whatever. I've had sacred sex with moresomes, which means group sex. I've had sacred sex with spirits. So it encompasses everything. All right. So don't get thinking, like I said, sometimes you'll run across some websites or whatever that talk only male, female. Don't let that stop you. So there's all kinds of ways of doing sacred sex. The other thing is that when we talk about sex and spirituality, a lot of us come from mainstream religions that have kind of separated those two. So, and that's a shame. It's a shame, and it's done for power. Not to get political or anything about this, but it was done to control people, and it's about power. So one of the things that I enjoyed about finding sacred sex was reclaiming that power. Because how I was raised in mainstream, it was definitely separate. It was definitely your spiritual path is your higher path, and your sexual path is your lower path, and they shouldn't meet, right? So, and that never felt right to me. And when that's done, it makes sex feel like it's dirty and shameful. And even if deep down, and I'm talking about me, even if deep down you know that it's not dirty and shameful, even if it was used to manipulate you, past trauma, baggage, all that stuff, it still doesn't feel like it should be made to feel dirty and shameful. But anyway, That's me. Take what you like, leave the rest. That's just some of my past. So what I found, it was actually kind of cool. Like I said, I've been going through a lot of my papers from 20 some years ago when I first started researching some of this and first came across sacred sexuality. And I was actually surprised at how many spiritual paths embrace sacred sexuality. I mean, when I heard the words and I started falling down rabbit holes researching this stuff, I was amazed and I was excited that this literally was a thing. So, a couple of cultures, religious paths, spiritual paths that embrace sexuality. You've got in China, and other regions, but let's just say in China is probably where it started. You have the Taoist, right? If you want to find a book on how to have multiple orgasms, that comes from the Taoist realm. That's a lot of Taoist teachings. So, China, Taoist. In India, you have the Tantrikas. So, that's where Tantra originated from. And even though Tantra is not completely about sex, Western Tantra is. So, original Tantra is a whole life path, not just a sex path. Western Tantra, or Neo Tantra, mostly focuses on the sexual ideas. So, you've got Tantra. Then you've got Kadoshka. And Kadoshka is more of a Native American path. It's not a single tribe, it's pieces pulled from various tribes to create a path, and they are very much about sacred sexuality. I got to go to one of their classes last year, and it was amazing. Oh, I love their teachings. I need to get back to one of their workshops again. Then you have Margot Anand. She's the author of The Art of Sexual Magic and The Art of Sexual Ecstasy. She calls practitioners of sacred sexuality sky dancers. Okay, so you've got Taoists, Tantrikas, Kadoshkas, sky dancers. There is also the Qadishti, which is more of Middle Eastern, ancient Middle Eastern area. We were the temple priestesses, the temple whores, the temple prostitutes, I think is how we language it now. But I am a modern Qadishti, which means my path is the path of sacred touch. And most Qadishti that I know follow a different path. They follow their own path. For some, it's all about healing. For some, it's sex magic. For some, it's they go to festivals and it's about healing and things like that. Ours is sacred touch, and that's what we teach with the path of the Qadishti. Then you have other ancient religions. You've got stories of the Great Rite, which is all about sex and manifesting through sexual energy, right? So all kinds of ancient paths, current paths, many choices, many things to draw from. Now, there are differences in these practices, but all forms have in common the intentional cultivation and use of sexual energy for spiritual growth, personal growth, healing, creativity, enhanced connection, pleasure, all that good, yummy stuff. So, with this in mind, with a little bit of my story, because my story involved me leaving the mainstream religion. I left it when I was junior high. I wasn't even a late teenager yet, but it was all very confusing to me how sex was being seen as shameful. And I had already suffered some trauma where sex was being used to control. And now the spiritual path that my family had put me on was about control. And now they were shaming sex, and I just didn't get it. And I was very confused. So I left. And luckily, the internet came out, and I was able to do some searching and found a path that works for me, which is Qadishti. Though I did not find that on the internet, I found that at a festival. So that was really cool. So, with all of this in mind, with this little bit of story, with this little bit of umbrella, high level thoughts about or description about sacred sex, I want you to think about how your sexuality fits with your spirituality and vice versa. Now, for me, before I found different paths, I really did. I had enough of my mainstream religion left in me to feel like I had to make a choice, that I could either be a sexual person or be a spiritual person. And I really had a hard time making a decision. Not that we have to make a decision, but back then I thought I did. I thought if I was the spiritual person, that the low base frequency of sex would not interest me except to have kids. And yeah, but man, there was a part of me, I was a very sexual being and I wanted to be a sexual being and I wanted to have pride. Pride's not the right word, but I wanted to embrace my sexuality. So I felt like it had been stomped on for so long, and I'd been made to feel shameful of it and guilty when I felt pleasure, that I really wanted to embrace my sexuality. So I ended up having that. I don't know if anybody else has this, but I ended up having that moment of, am I going to be a soccer mom or a slut? I don't think I can be both. And then I started finding things that said, no, you can be both. You can absolutely be both. Of course, you can be both. We're spiritual beings in a sexual body. Why wouldn't we be both? And I'm like, because I was told this wasn't possible. Well, obviously, I was told wrong, because there's tons of ancient religions. And like I said, I gave you a list of religions that currently practice sacred sex as part of their path. So I ended up embracing some of that. So I did things. I found, right, I researched, I found someone that was on the Kadoshka path, which is the Native American one, and talked with them. They are still great friends. I just had dinner with them last night, and this was 25 years ago that I found them. And just to embrace that, and I liked the look on their faces when they talked about combining the two and how they did it. So I did more research and more research, and I was reading about how sacred sex and conscious sex and using sexual energy to connect to other people, and about how it would raise your consciousness level so you could create a higher consciousness. It would be easier to connect with others and to everything. And I really needed that. With my trauma, I found all of this at about the same time as I started my healing path. But with my trauma, I was a numb person. I was either numb or angry, and I really wanted something in the middle. And I really wanted to learn to connect to people, to figure out myself, to connect to me. And this just seemed like the perfect way to do it. I was reading articles on how sacred sex can manifest healing, right? I absolutely wanted that. There are exercises in Tantra books that you can buy that are literally about healing yourself, healing your sexual organs from trauma, healing all kinds of stuff. And I was fascinated by it. And I was going to use sex to heal from sexual trauma. Fascinating and very, very, very powerful. I was also finding articles and reading books on sex magic, which is about manifesting almost anything, not just connection. I mean, sex is the creation of life. What more powerful thing is there? Why wouldn't we bring that into our spiritual practice, right? The creation of life. Ugh. All I knew is I needed this in my life. So I felt everything about this resonated and I needed it in my life. So soon after that, Dan and I are looking for events to present at. We are looking for events to attend, and we were shown the Qadishti Fest in southern Indiana at a campground. And during this Qadishti Fest, we're like, Qadishti, what the hell is that? Oh, sacred sex, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this sounds interesting. And we went to this festival and we met this group of people from Chicago, and they are Qadishti that run a sex magic temple in Chicago. And just fascinating people. I've done a lot of work with them over the years. And the way they combine everything just made a lot of sense. Now, a lot of what they do is very much about working with gods and goddesses of different pantheons and using sexual energy to create healing. I've been in a few of their rituals. It's an amazing practice, and I'm so glad I found it because that's what I ended up embracing into my spiritual practice. Usually when people join these calls, they want specific things that they can do to ramp up their practice of sacred sexuality, maybe some beginning practices that they can do. Now, remember, I teach 13 more classes on sacred sexuality. Some are about what it is, some are about energy work, some are about healing work, some are about energy centers and chakras and auras and all this type of stuff, right? Some of it is the practices. And the two that I like to start with that everybody can do, one of them is conscious breathing, and the other one is eye gazing. Okay. So even with those two practices in mind, there's something else that I had to learn to do first before I could even do those two simple things. One of them is I had to learn how to drop my walls. So I was not connecting with people because I had my defense mechanisms up. So I had walls that I had built between me and myself, me and other people, me and anything else. So to do these practices, I have to drop my walls. And I talk about that in my psychic hygiene class. Okay. I talk about building walls, taking down walls, building filters, taking down filters, energy cleansing, all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I had to learn was to take down my walls. Now, when I take down my walls, I become vulnerable. Okay. That is part of what helps the connection with other people is being vulnerable. I had to learn to be vulnerable and know that I can take care of myself, that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? In sacred sex, it's a requirement. So to be vulnerable. The other thing I had to learn, and this one was a no-brainer to me. So this one's a no-brainer to me, but not to everyone. This is not how we are taught about sex. But the no-brainer to me was that sex doesn't need to have a goal. And of course, when I say goal, I mean orgasm, right? Many of us, or at least for me, when I was connecting with people, when I was having sex with people, it all seemed to be about the orgasm. And I'm not about the orgasm. They're fabulous when they happen, but that's not my goal. My goal is to connect with the other person. My goal is to drop those walls, become vulnerable, have that connection, and have an amazing journey, an amazing experience. And that's what makes it spiritual to me, is that whole thing. Because when I do that, I literally can feel my connection to so much more than me and the person I'm with, or persons, as the case may be. So I need that. Now, the difference is when I practice sex magic, which is a whole different class as well. Sex magic, the goal for me is orgasm because that's the powerful energy that you're using to create things. Okay. So that orgasmic energy. When it's not sex magic, I really don't have a goal with sex. I want to foreplay can last forever. I want that connection. I want that interaction. And then, like I said, orgasms are pretty fantastic too, but I don't like having that goal. And when I'm with someone that does have that goal, to me, sex loses its spiritual connection and it becomes very boring. So I've had to let people know, please don't try to bring me to orgasm first. We're taught that in magazines. We're taught that, you should bring the woman off first, sort of thing, or else you're selfish and things like that. I have tried to tell the people that I am with, please don't listen to that. Be with me, and whatever happens, happens. Don't have that goal. Anyway, I talk about that a lot. You'll hear me say that a lot on classes, that orgasms do not have to be the goal. And when they're not the goal, what is the goal, right? The goal is that connection. So, how can you start with dropping your walls and being vulnerable and connecting? Let's say you're connecting to another person, okay? You can do this with yourself. There are absolutely solo practices, and there is a book that is on my book reading list. There's a book called Jewel in the Lotus, and there is another one that is called Sacred Sexuality by Jawala. Like I said, those are on the book reading list. They have solo practices in there, so you can absolutely do this stuff on your own or with groups or whatever. So, but I'm going to tell it as one person to one person. So, with mindful breathing, with conscious breathing, you're just trying to create that connection with that person. Maybe before a scene, maybe before sex. I know sometimes in the dungeon in scenes, it's like, okay, you strip your clothes off, I'll get the toys out, lay down on the thing, and we'll do the thing. Oh, yes, aftercare. Well, I like some pre-play. I God, there's got to be a name for it. Not before care, pre-care, before care. None of that sounds right. But everybody's all about the aftercare afterwards. Well, there should be a beginning as well. And I try to do that with people that I play with. I will stand there with them and try to breathe together. Dan, as the top, as the dominant, he will actually put his hand on the person's chest that he's going to play with, and he'll have him stand there and look him in the eye, and then he'll push on their chest to get them to breathe. He'll push and release to get them to breathe in unison with him. It makes some people feel very anxious when he does that. We're not used to that connection. We're used to the jump on the cross, jump on the table, let's have some fun. But when you do that intimate, hey, I want you to breathe with me, I want you to eye gaze with me, that's a little intense for people. And maybe it should be. That's the spiritual connection that we're making with the other person. So I like to do the conscious breathing. You can match the breathing both in, both out at the same time. It can be alternate breathing. It can be whatever, as long as it's conscious and it's mindful and you're paying attention to each other. With the eye gazing, I mean, you're literally like looking into their soul when you look into their eyes. Now the trick is to try to look left eye to left eye. That's your receptive eye. When you try to look two to two, it ends up looking like you're staring. And then it gets uncomfortable because your eyes want to switch back and forth because they don't know where to look. What about sacred touch, right? Sacred touch is touch with no goal. All right. So I just did this with a couple of people Saturday night at the dungeon, Friday night at the dungeon. And literally, it is just laying on of hands with no goal. The first person wasn't so sure, but got used to it. And it's because we're taught that people do have a goal. When I negotiated with them, I was like, okay, so I'm just going to lay on of hands. You get to keep your clothes on. I won't be touching any naughty bits. And it's just a laying on of hands so that you can feel energy. And that may be the first time that they have felt that. So it can be a little confusing. The next person, I did an all over sacred touch session with them. And again, I told them the same thing. You can wear whatever clothes you want. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not touching naughty bits. If you're more comfortable without the corset on, take the corset off, right? So, and then it is just laying on of hands. And so many people are touch starved, especially right now after COVID. that this can be a very vulnerable situation. It's very connecting, but I did the conscious breathing, I did the eye gazing, I had them lay down and spoke softly, and then I did the sacred touch, which was just laying hands on the body. So, you can do these simple things to start connecting your sexuality with your spirituality. Now, those are in the beginner realm. I'm not saying that they're not to be used later as well. They're not just beginning stuff, they're all the time stuff, but they're the easiest things to do. And then you have something that's called awakening the Kundalini. So I consider this more medium practice, maybe even advanced. So if you type in awakening the Kundalini or Kundalini yoga, this is energy work that raises the sexual energy in your body. So we have sexual energy coiled at the base of our spine. And when we have intent to wake this up and we do practices to wake this up, this is going to shoot that energy through your body so that you feel sexual all over, not just in your naughty bits. When I found out about Kundalini, I was super excited, right? This is something that I could do, that I could feel, that would connect me and connect me with others and connect me with everything. It's a very fascinating practice. Now, a couple of things that you can do. If you've ever had sex and felt a vibration at the bottom of your spine, for many of us, if we notice it at all, we tend to shut that down because we don't know what it is. If that happens to you again, let it open up. Kind of pay attention to it and have intent that it travels through your body. So let it travel up. Let it travel through the chakras. If it only travels up a little bit, that's cool. Maybe try edging. Maybe try getting to the point of orgasm, seeing that energy at one of the chakras, and then backing off a little bit, and then edging again and having the intent of that energy going up to the next chakra, right? I mean, you can continue edging to where when it explodes out the top of your head, you're now having a full body orgasm. Those are absolutely possible. And with awakening your Kundalini, you can have that happen. And I'm gonna tell you, when stuff like that happens, for many of us, orgasms feel like a spiritual experience anyway, but something like that is just phenomenal. If you've never experienced that before, give it a try and see if that works for you. And then there's something called the fire breath orgasm. So again, I have said orgasm's not that important, that if we practice no goal, that we can get to some levels of vulnerability and to some levels of connection. But there's also the things that you can do on purpose, which is like awakening the Kundalini, which is the fire breath orgasm, which involves a pelvic rock and bringing fire up from your Kundalini and through your body. So again, fire hose, you're getting lots of words you may not have heard of before, just throwing it all at you. All right. So again, it is connection to people. It is no goal, or it could go as far as sex magic or purposefully working with your body with the Kundalini and the fire breath orgasms. There's all kinds of practices that you can do that will start to incorporate your sexual self with your spiritual self and vice versa. We don't have to choose soccer mom or slut. We don't have to choose spiritual or sexual. We can have it all. And by researching and studying all these other paths like Tantra, Qadishti, Taoist, Kadoshka, all of those things, we can learn more ways of bringing this all together within us. Now, I'm actually going to try something with you. So if you are on this call or if you are listening to this recording later, please make sure you are not, this is the disclaimer, please make sure you are not driving or operating heavy machinery if you are going to participate in this. This is a guided meditation that we're going to do to try to tap into that sexual spiritual self. Okay. So if you are on the call, just go la 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 to yourself if you're driving or on heavy machinery. If you are in a place where you can do a short guided meditation, then I want you to go ahead and to relax. So wherever you're sitting, laying down, however you're positioned, just wiggle a little bit and relax. And then I want you to close your eyes. Okay? So close your eyes. It's easier if you close your eyes all the way. I don't always do that during meditation, but I do during guided meditation. So breathe normally, close your eyes, and relax. Now I want you to take a deep breath through the nose and then out through the mouth. And do a second one in through the nose, out through the mouth. And a third one, relaxing even more. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And as your breath comes back to normal, I want you to picture yourself covered in layers of blankets. Whatever blankets, heavy blankets, light blankets, colorful, soft, whatever blankets you have. And then I want you to realize that you're covered in blankets, but that there's something special underneath. So I want you to take a peek under the blankets. Those blankets are layers that we've developed over the years, defense mechanisms, shame, guilt. So as you're looking under the blankets, underneath all those defense mechanisms, I want you to realize that you are hiding, protecting a soft, luminous body. And I want you to see that soft, luminous body. I want you to bring forth that transparent, bright, sparkling, luminous energy from within you, your spiritual being within your human body. And as you notice that you have this being, I want you to bring your focus to your root chakra, which is at the base of your spine. And I want you to start pumping your sexual energy by squeezing and releasing. And you're just going to squeeze and release with the intent of building energy. And as you squeeze and release, and you think of building your energy, I want you to see your body getting brighter and brighter, more sparkly. And as it gains power and as it gains light, I want you to go ahead and drop those blankets that are around you. Create space for your light to expand. Push this light out of you and around you. Give it some room. Let it grow. It's still within you. Keep pumping. Feel that sexual energy that's expanding beyond you. And as you push that light out, as you pump that light out, feel it touch that which is beyond you. Let it grow as big as it wants to and touch what it can. You may even feel like it's touching everything, like you are part of the all. We're just going to do that for a little bit, and then we're going to bring it back in. So you can stop pumping at this point and slowly bring that light back to the boundaries of your human body. Now, instead of pulling up blankets and layers of heavy shields, instead, picture a bundle of sheer fabric at your feet. And you're going to reach down and lift that fabric, and it can be whatever color that you want it to be. And we're going to wrap that fabric around us, just a sheer filter instead of shields. And we're going to set intent with that sheer fabric. We're going to tell the fabric that it is just going to filter so that only good feelings, only good things can flow in and out of that fabric instead of the blankets, which stop things from coming in and out. We're just going to have the sheer fabric. Speak to the fabric, asking it to allow good feelings to flow through it in and out. Set that intent that it'll filter the energy and just allow in the good, yummy energy. So we've got the filter set up. We've got our luminous body underneath it. We've been pumping, so maybe we feel the sexual energy still. This is our spiritual being experiencing sexual energy. We're spiritual beings in human form. And if we allow that to flow out, if we allow that to shine, we're going to be able to connect the two and live with both in our life. We don't have to make a decision of either or. So, in a moment, I'm going to have you open your eyes. But first, I want you to take another deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then on the count of 3, we're going to open our eyes. So 1, you feel yourself sitting in your seat or however you are positioned on your furniture or floor. You're going to feel yourself, feel your body. Then I want you to wiggle your toes and your fingers, coming back to the present. We can feel our body, our fingers and our toes. And then 3, I want you to open your eyes, fully present. Okay, so you are here with me now, open eyes, fully present. Maybe you still feel that luminescent body within you. Maybe you still feel that sexual energy, but you are here and in the present. Hi, welcome back. So with that, thanks for joining my class today. Hopefully you were able to feel a sense of your spiritual self, your sexual self, how you can combine them, how you can feel the power of both and combine them. I want you to take some deep breaths as I wrap up a little bit, and then I'm going to stop recording and you will have a chance to ask your questions. Okay. So to wrap up, just remember that you can find everything I do, everything that Dan and I do, everything about the podcast, the books, the classes, all of it, and sign up for our monthly newsletter at eroticawakening.com.